I'm Maureen Roy. This is my brother Tim O'Sullivan. We're brother and sister. Tim's a very emotional person, and that comes from his Irish heritage, right? Our dad was an emotional person too, wasn't he, Tim? And our mom was pretty emotional too. As being brother and sister, we know about each other is that the history that we have together, we carry each other's history. We know things about each other that nobody else knows about us. And that's important to both of us, right, Tim? We grew up together in an era when people with disabilities were horribly marginalized, to the point where our family was advised by the doctors that it would be better for me if Tim went to live in an institution. My brother at 9 years old was taken away and went to live in Huronia in Aurelia. None of us were happy about it, but it was what the doctors and the professionals of the day suggested. So it was a very difficult time for all of us. At that time, the big push in the movement around people with intellectual disabilities was to have the big institutions made into smaller institutions closer to people's homes. So that's what happened with Tim. About 10 years later, he moved into a smaller institution in the Niagara region, and he lived there for about 20 years. But during that time, we visited him regularly. Several times a year, he would come home or we would go to visit him, and we never lost touch, thank goodness. I think one of the biggest jumps in both of our growth was becoming involved with People First. I was exposed to People First through community living and through a good friend, Karen Pastrick, who's since passed away, who was involved in bringing the People First group to Welland in the early 90s. She was a strong People First advocate, and we got to be friends, and she asked me if I would be an advisor to the local groups. So Tim and I talked it over, and we agreed that he would like to be a member, and I thought that being an advisor would be a good learning experience for me, which it absolutely turned out to be. And so we came from a time where people didn't have a voice, and we started going to conferences and meetings and events and started hearing people with disabilities speaking themselves so clearly and articulately about the things that were important to them. And not only that, this movement around people with intellectual disabilities helps make the community better for everyone. It's not just about people with disabilities and their families. It's about everybody, because when people are accepted and their talents and contributions are acknowledged, that's good for everybody. One time we were in Toronto at a beautiful downtown hotel on the water. It was just gorgeous, and Tim kept looking over. Across the street was the Harbor Police, and Tim's, you remember that? So down we went and over we went, and just as we were approaching the building, a couple of police officers came out and said, he gave them the big grin, right, and said, oh, hi, are you here to visit? Do you need any help? And we said, oh no, we just wanted to have a look, thank you. And I'm tiptoeing past them, and Tim puts his hand out and they shake hands with him. Would you like to come inside? Next thing you know, there we were out in the garage on the boat, on the police boat in the Toronto Harbor, right? So that's what he gives me. I'm the meek one, and he's the one who says, come on, let's go for it. Tim's dad and Tim's granddad were firefighters, and Tim was born a firefighter. We have a picture of him that we've lost that we need to find sometime when he was about 3 or 4 years old, dressed up in his dad's fire stuff, with this helmet that came down to here and this coat that weighed him down. Here he was, like 60-something years old, and we're still looking for the firefighters that he knows he is. And one of the staff had a brother-in-law who was a firefighter out in Fenwick, and she introduced them. And Tim went to a meeting out there, and lo and behold, the Fenwick firefighters had the William O'Sullivan Memorial Trophy. They had won it, and that trophy was in honor of our dad that my mother had donated years and years and years ago. But it was a good thing, right? It was an awesome thing. And so they said, well, Tim O'Sullivan, has he got anything to do with this William O'Sullivan trophy? And we said, yes, that would be his dad. So the next thing you knew, he was back at the next practice. And the next thing you knew, he was back at the next practice. And then he was out riding in the fire truck. And now he goes to the practices regularly. The guys have been to his house. They've brought him his own helmet with his name on it. So it's very much a mutual admiration group that's going now, and I think Tim's very included part of the Fenwick Fire Department. For both people, for the person with the disability label and the other typical brother or sister, everybody loses out when you don't have that relationship. It's not just about advocating for the person with the disability, it's also about yourself and what you learn and the relationship and the love and the growth that you have as a person because this person is in your life. So it's not a burden, it's to your benefit as a member of humanity to have this relationship with a person who is marginalized and who does struggle. It just gives you a whole understanding that marginalization is just wrong and that people are people, and it's very helpful to have that other perspective in your own life as well as to be there for a person who needs some extra support. It is definitely about everybody in the community. It's not just about people with intellectual disabilities. It's about people being interdependent. There's so much conversation about independence. Our mother was really good at including me, but not putting things on me. So somehow she had the wisdom to find that balance between this is your brother, as your brother you have a responsibility, but you don't have to be the be-all and the end-all for him either. And you know, there's that balance, because I've met brothers and sisters over the years who said, my mother used to make me take my brother everywhere, and my mother would make me do everything with my brother, and I never had time for my friends. Well, obviously that's not a good approach. And then there are others who say, I don't want to give my other child the burden. Well, if you're thinking of it as a burden in the first place, you need to adjust your own thinking, because yes, it's difficult. I'm not saying for 1 minute it's not difficult, but it's not a burden. It's just what it is. It is what it is, right? And so you have to figure it out as you go, and not present it or think of it as a burden. And now he lives around the corner from me in a house with 2 other people and some wonderful staff people. And if he ever needs anything, he has me on speed dial. He picks up the phone, and I can be there in I can be there in 30 seconds, right when you need me. Yes. And it's okay. It's pretty good at your house. Pretty good at your house. Yes. Tim does spend weekends here sometimes, and we vacation together sometimes. Next weekend we're going to a family engagement gathering. And you're emotional. You're emotional because Yes, I know, I know. I love you very much too. You're a good brother. I love you very much too.